Last night, John ate 1/5 of a pan of lasagna. Today, he wants to share the leftovers with himself and three of his friends. How much lasagna will each friend get? So, right here, we have a pan of lasagna. If John ate 1/5 of the lasagna last night, we have to consider that. So, we have to take this whole pan of lasagna and break it up into fifths in order to take away 1/5. So we have a whole pan and we need to put 4 lines to divide this pan into fifths. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. Now that we have our 4 lines, we can say that each section of this pan represents 1/5 of the original whole pan of lasagna. So we have 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, and 5/5. And remember, 5 divided by 5 equals 1. A fraction is another form of division. So now we can ask ourselves, how much of the pan was left over? So we can use the expression 1 minus 1/5 to answer that question. So we know that the only way you can add or subtract fractions is if you have a common denominator. But 1 is a whole number, so we can change it into a fraction. Now, since we need our denominator to be a 5 or to become a 5 in order to subtract to have a common denominator, we can rewrite 1 as 5 divided by 5 or 5/5. And then we can take that 5/5 and subtract 1/5 from it. So our new expression will be 5/5 minus 1/5. And that will tell us how much of the pan is left over, which is going to be 4/5. So if we look here at the pan of lasagna, we have this little rectangle that's taken away 1/5 of the original pan. And we can see that we have 4/5 left over. So John is going to split the 4/5 evenly between himself and his friends. So that brings us to our next question. John wants to divide the leftovers between himself and 3 of his friends. How many people will share the leftovers? So we have John, and we have 1, 2, 3 friends, 4 people, which brings us to our next. What is a division expression that could model this situation? So you have to think division. What is division? Division is repeated subtraction or to break into groups. So you have to always start your division expression off with whatever is being divided or whatever is being repeat subtracted into groups. So in this case, we're going to start off with the 4/5 pan of lasagna because that's everything that's going to be split evenly between the 4 friends. So we're going to start off with 4/5, which represents the leftovers, the 4/5 that is left over. And then we're going to take that 4/5 and we're going to divide it evenly between the 4 people that's going to share the leftovers, the pan. This expression will tell us how much each person will get. So since we cannot have division next to division, because remember 4/5 is a form of division, and then that we have a division symbol. We don't want that next to each other. We know how to divide with whole numbers. So we're going to change this division into multiplication by making an equivalent expression. So we should know from last week that dividing by a number is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of that number. So in this case, we have 4/5 divided by 4. So dividing by 4 is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of 4, which is 1/4. So our new expression is 4/5 times 1/4. Now, when we multiply fractions, we can only multiply the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator. So it's important for our fractions to be improper fractions, but we don't have to worry about that in this case because we have two proper fractions. Now we can multiply the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator. So we'll have 1 times 4 for the numerator, and then 5 times 4 for the denominator. 1 times 4 is 4, and 5 times 4 is 20. So we can say that each person will receive this amount. So now let's see, what does that look like with this big pan of lasagna that we have here that we have to model with? So we know based on what we just got using math or using an equivalent expression, we know that each person should receive 4/20 of the pan of lasagna. So what does that look like in a model? So if we look at this original pan of lasagna, we can see that 4/5 is represented. If you look at the fractions, the pan was divided into fifths. We took away the 1/5. Now we have 4/5 left over. What do we have to do with that 4/5? We have to take that 4/5 and divide it evenly between the 4 people. We need 3 lines to divide evenly between 4 people. So we have 1, 2, 3 lines. And notice that we can put people on the side. So let's see what that looks like. So each person is going to receive this section. So this is John. John is going to receive the circle section going across horizontally by his name. The first friend is going to receive this, and then the third friend, and then the fourth friend. So each friend is going to receive 4 out of 5, 10, 15, 20 pieces. Remember, a fraction is a part out of a whole. So we have a part, the part that each person is going to get is 4, and the whole out of the whole pan is 20. So each person is going to receive 4/20 of the pan of lasagna. Now, a good question that a good student would ask is, how do you know when to circle across, or how do you know when to take the part or when to take the whole? So in this case, you have to understand that you're starting with 4/5 of a pan of lasagna, and you're taking that not whole pan of lasagna, less than a whole pan of lasagna, and dividing it evenly between a whole number. So because you're taking a fraction of a whole and dividing it evenly by a whole number, your answer should be smaller than what you started off with. So you can think about it like this. Let's say you have half of a chocolate bar left, and you want to take that half of a chocolate bar and split it evenly between 2 people. So you have half of a chocolate bar and you split it and give one part of the half to one person and another part of the half to another person. So each person will receive 1/4, and 1/4 is smaller than the original 1/2. So whenever you have a fraction, a proper fraction, and you divide it by a whole number, the quotient is going to be less than what you originally started with. The divisor is what you're making groups of. So since your divisor is a whole number, you can't take a whole group of 2 from the half that you started with. So you're going to get a fraction of a whole, if that makes sense. So in this case, this pan of lasagna, we started off with 4/5 of the pan of lasagna. So if we're dividing evenly between 4 people, 4 is the divisor. The divider, you can't take 4 whole groups from a proper fraction, which is already less than 1. So you should end up with something like a fraction of a number. And in this case, that fraction is 4/20. Because we can't take 4 whole groups, because 4 is a whole number, we can't take 4 whole groups from 4/5, which is already less than 1, which is less than 4. And we all know that in my math class, we have to simplify fractions. So 4/20 is an unsimplified fraction. So you have to find a number that's divisible by the numerator and the denominator. In this case, you can use 2 or you can use 4. I prefer to use 4. But you divide twice by 2, you'll get the same answer. So if we divide the numerator and denominator by 4, we get 4 divided by 4, which is 1 for the numerator, and 20 divided by 4 for the denominator, which is 5. And the last question, How much of the lasagna will each friend get? I hope you know the answer to that by now. The circle going horizontally around the pan is what that person will receive. And notice that it's smaller than the original. And if we simplify 4/20th, the part that each person will get out of the whole, if we simplify that, each person will have 1/5